Hey guys, welcome back to another lesson with me, Melissa. Today we're going to talk about past simple and present perfect. And I promise, I'm going to make it clear and understandable. Okay, let's get started. Yesterday, I watched an amazing movie that made me laugh and I also cried. This is a past simple phrase, and in it we have 3 verbs in the past simple form. 2 of these verbs are regular, and 1 of them is irregular. They all follow different spelling rules. Okay, so let's start with the regular verbs, and we have 4 different rules to follow when it comes to spelling regular verbs in the past simple form. So the first is the most common, and that is when we have a regular verb in the past simple form, we simply add ed. So work becomes worked. Play becomes played. Our second form is when our verb already ends in an e. So we don't need to add ed again, we just need to add a d. For example, decide turns into decided. Receive turns into received. Our next rule is when we have a verb that ends in a consonant plus a y. And in this case, we have to remove the y and add ied. So, cry becomes cried. Reply becomes replied. And our final form of spelling is when we have a consonant plus a vowel plus another consonant. And in this case, we have to double the last consonant and then add ed. For example, stop becomes stopped. Clap becomes clapped. So let's take a look at the spelling rules for our irregular verbs. In the first case, our irregular verb stays the same in the present tense and in the past tense. So these are verbs like cut, put, or cost. Present tense, cut. Past tense, cut. Put, present, past, put. Cost, present, past, cost. We can't say cutted or costed or putted. It stays the same. Our second spelling rule when it comes to irregular verbs is when the verb just changes its spelling completely from the present tense to the past tense. So these are verbs like fly becomes flew. Go turns into went. All of these irregular verbs are sometimes difficult to remember. So at the end of this video, I'm going to leave you a list of a lot of the most common irregular verbs. So you'll see them in the present, the past, and the past participle form. Okay, let's take a look at some examples of positive past simple phrases. Yesterday, I went to the store with my brother. I finished my homework at 10 p.m. So you'll see the structure of the phrase is the subject plus the verb. If we want to put those phrases in the past negative form, we say, yesterday I didn't go to the store with my brother. Or I didn't finish my homework at 10 p.m. So here we have the subject plus did not, which we always abbreviate into didn't when we're speaking, plus the verb in the infinitive form. So I didn't finish. I didn't go. When we're using the verb to be, we don't need to use didn't for our negative past phrase. We simply say, I wasn't at the beach yesterday. We weren't in the office yesterday. Okay, let's look at the past simple question form. And in this case, we're going to put the did or the didn't plus the subject plus the verb. So, did she go to the office yesterday? Didn't you do the shopping yesterday? Okay, so now we understand the different spelling rules when it comes to our verbs, and we understand the structure of our past simple phrase. So when do we use the past simple? Well, it's pretty easy. We use the past simple when we're talking about an action in the past that has finished. Okay, guys, it's time to take a look at the present perfect. A present perfect phrase is formed like this. Subject plus have or has plus the verb in the past participle form. For example, I have watched that film many times. I plus have plus the verb watched. Now, when we speak, we usually abbreviate the subject and the verb have. So it sounds more like this. I've watched that film many times. I've watched. If we want to put a present perfect phrase in the negative form, this is how it looks. She hasn't been to the doctor yet. So we have the subject plus have or has, not, and then our verb in the past participle. And again, we abbreviate the have not or the has not. So she hasn't been to the doctor yet. And finally, let's move on to the question form of a present perfect. And all we need to do for this is change the position of the verb have with the subject. So now we have or has plus the subject plus the verb in the past participle form. Have you been to the supermarket? Hasn't she been to the supermarket? So we can say this in both the positive or the negative form. Okay, it's time to take a look at the reasons when we use the present perfect. So we're going to talk about 3 different reasons. The first one is when we are talking about something that happened in the past and is still true today. For example, I have known her for 10 years. I've known her for 10 years. I met her in the past, 10 years ago, and I still know her today. Another example would be, she's lived in London since 2005. She has lived in London since 2005. She moved to London in 2005, and she still lives there. The second reason we use the present perfect is when we talk about a past experience that happened in our life, but we don't talk about specifically when this experience happened. For example, I've eaten at that restaurant before. I've eaten at that restaurant before. In the past, I ate at that restaurant, but I'm not saying exactly when I ate at that restaurant. I've eaten at that restaurant before. All right, and our third reason why we use present perfect is when we're talking about an action that happened in the past, but it has consequences now. For example, I've lost my keys. I've lost my keys. I lost my keys in the past. It may have been only 1 hour before, but I lost my keys in the past, and now the consequence is I can't get into my house. I've lost my keys. Happened in the past, and it has a consequence now. Another example of this could be, she has missed the bus. She's missed the bus. So she missed the bus maybe 3 minutes ago. But she missed the bus in the past, and now the consequence might be she's going to be late for work. So she's missed the bus, and she will be late for work. Okay, let's take a look at 2 different phrases, one in the past simple and one in the present perfect, that look very similar and let's try and understand what makes them different. All right, past simple. I worked in that company for 5 years. I worked in that company for 5 years. Present perfect. I've worked in this company for 5 years. I've worked in this company for 5 years. Okay, so the first one, the past simple, tells us that the action is finished. I don't work in that company anymore. It's finished. But the second phrase, the one in the present perfect, tells us that I still work in this company. I've been there for 5 years and I'm still there now. Okay, let's take a look at some common errors that we might make when we're using the present perfect or the past simple. For example, I've cooked chicken for the party yesterday. I've cooked chicken for the party yesterday. Sounds like something that happened in the past and is finished, right? So in this case, we really should say, I cooked chicken for the party yesterday, not I've cooked chicken. All right, let's take a look at another one. I've met her on the bus last week. I've met her on the bus last week. Again, this sounds like an action that happened in the past and is finished. So we need to put it in the past simple. I met her on the bus last week. Finished, done. Okay guys, now it's time for you to practice what you've learned today. Here comes the quiz. Good luck! Thank you so much for joining me today, everybody. I hope you learned something and I hope you had fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.